How's it going, everybody? I am ZBilbs and I'm back here with another Metal Albums Ranked video, and today I'm going over a classic black metal band, and that is Borknagar, with their newly released album Fall. I was introduced to this band, I really loved their new album, and I decided to give the rest of their discography a peek. Before going into this list, you should know I'm not the biggest black metal fan. That's why I haven't gone over more classic black metal bands like Mayhem, Dark Throne, Burzum, you name it. There needs to be a lighter edge to it. That's why I've gone through bands like Agalloch and Enslaved and Alcest, Dimmu Borgir. So Borknagar, I love their new album because I love how it meshes more like a fun symphonic progressive style with that black metal edge. So you should know going into this list that I tend to like newer albums because they have that style that I like more, whereas older albums that are more just straight black metal are not really my style. So a lot of the lower albums on this list, a lot of people probably love, but just personal preference. But either way, without any more preface on why certain picks might be where, let's just jump into the list. Starting off at number 12, my least favorite Borknagar album by quite a large margin is Quintessence. I really don't think there is a single song I like on this album. Now, one thing I absolutely love about Borknagar that I didn't know going into this is Vortex. I had no, or ICS Vortex. I had no idea that he was like a main singer before I got into this band. I listened to his work when I went through Dimmu Borgir, and he was probably my favorite part of that band. So the fact that I got more of him with Borknagar was just absolutely amazing. That being said, I think he shines way more when they up the production quality and his vocals really come through in that more like symphonic style that he has in Dimmu Borgir. When they're more on like the really lo-fi kind of darker bad production that they purposefully do in that the early era of Borknagar, I think his vocals really just don't quite work well. They don't have time to shine. And this, out of all the albums, maybe even the original album, is probably the worst production quality, I think, on purpose, because the Archaic course before this, I think they upped it, they made it a little bit more symphonic, and then they're like, no, we just want full black metal. So much so that I can barely understand a single thing that they're saying, and it just all sounds like staticky fuzz, which I know a lot of hardcore black metal fans like that. I'm not a hardcore black metal fan. I like just the mix, the dark edge with some more clean stuff. I like the mix there. This is not the mix. This, for me, just sounds like garbled garbage, and the good of Vortex's voice just completely gets drowned out. So not necessarily a bad album, but an album that I do not care for in the slightest. So moving on, another album I don't really care for, but there is some I like on, is the debut album, the self-titled Borknagar. Now this album, it's pretty much the same gripes with this one as it was with Quintessence. The same just straight up grimy production quality of Quintessence, the bad lo-fi black metal sound that a lot of people love and I do not like in the slightest. However, why I like this album more is, unlike Quintessence, which just feels like it's trying to go just straight black metal and then just underneath the black metal haze insert some, I don't know, progressive riffs or styles in there. This one actually has a very noticeable folky edge to it. There's a number of solid songs or just instrumental pieces that I enjoy on their own because there's no, black metal wailing. Even though they have kind of a hard on the ears production quality, I can enjoy the cool folky style that they do. And even on the songs that I don't like, I like the folky edge that they mix in a little bit more. So songs like Vedsteingard, Kriegstev, Nord, Nagok, I think are enjoyable enough for me that I wouldn't quite put this in the last spot. But overall, just not quite my style. So that's going to be the self-titled Borknagar at number 11. Moving on to number 10, I have Epic. Now, a little preface about this album and then four others kind of like it. There's very distinct eras of Borknagar, and I think as a whole, even though like the early era is kind of weird, going with like different singers, and they're like, are they black metal? Are they folk metal? It's just kind of weird. They have a very distinct style for the middle four albums. They're all kind of centered around like philosophy and naturalism and all of that stuff, and which is very cool for me because I have a degree in history and philosophy. So I was like, oh yeah, a black metal album about philosophy, like I'm down. And you know, with the singer, I think that they have for a bulk of the albums like Winter Sorg. He's solid. He's not as good as Vortex, but he's solid enough. The problem is the songwriting on here is so kind of progressive in that there's very little to no kind of hooks or choruses or memorable standout parts that for the most of this middle section, I think is just almost completely forgettable. There are some all right songs here and there, but as a whole, kind of these four, with one sort of exception, I doesn't really do it for me. And so, why do I think Epic is my least favorite of these four? I don't know. It's kind of a sticks and stones type of a thing. I think it ultimately comes down to, you know, it's a fairly lengthy album, like a lot of these four, and there's just the least songs that I even tolerate on here. Man, just a lot of these songs just sound like really pretentious, like they're just saying all of these fancy philosophy terms that I can barely hear because a lot of them are just, you know, black metal garbled stuff, and even the clean vocals aren't sung in a interesting enough way that it almost sounds just like straight up spoken word. But obviously it's a critique that I have for most of these middle albums. I'd say the one song that I really like on here is Traveler, because I think that has the most just straight up kind of hooky, fun chorus in there. Some other decent ones like Future Reminiscence, The Weight of Wind, The Wonder are all solid. But overall, I think this album is fairly bland, not terribly interesting to me as a whole. So I can see why people who like the black metal style, the kind of the weird structure that these songs go for, I see why they could get a kick out of it. But for me, just really uninteresting. And then moving on to number 9, I have Universal. Now, as these kind of middle chapters go, I think they up the production quality a little bit, make it a little bit less lo-fi and a little bit cleaner sounding. Although I think this one is still pretty darn low quality, so that's why I like this one maybe a little bit more. I also like that for one song they have a guest appearance of Vortex with My Domain, which not coincidentally is easily the best song on this album and probably why it gets the edge. This one doesn't have, I think, as many solid songs as Epic, but I think there's a couple more songs that I think are kind of decent, that kind of bring some folky elements, like The Stir of Seasons. I like Flesh Flower for 1,000 Years to Come. There's some more interesting stuff on here, but once again, same as what I've said with this middle chunk, it's just I really don't like this combination that they're going for. I don't like really the clean vocals by Winter Sorg. The the philosophy theme that they're going for, I think, falls flat with the way they present it. So not a terribly interesting album as well. So that's Universal at number 9. Moving on to number 8, I have got Empiricism. Now, this is my favorite. I say when there's like 4 middle albums, it goes from Empiricism to Universal. The Origin, which is coming up later, is kind of, it still has that, I'm pretty sure, that philosophy style, but is a completely unique way in which it is presented, which is why I like it more. Out of like the 3 that kind of mesh black metal and weird progressive stuff, This is definitely my favorite. Probably for one song in particular, and I think this is the one song when I watched who is Metal Trenches, his ranking on Borknagar. He doesn't like this one because probably he's more of a straight up black metal fan. I like, more of a mix. The View of Everlast. I really like that song. It's probably why it gets the edge. But there's some other good ones. I really like Gods of My World. The Stellar Dome. The Genuine Pulse is pretty good. Other than that, same problems as the last two albums that I said. I don't want to go into it too much, but it's got high enough highs that it's going to come in here at number 8. Moving on to number 7, we're going to go back to the first era for some better stuff than Quintessence and Borknagar, because at 7 I have the Archaic Course. Now, this is one of the two early ones with Vortex. Obviously, I didn't like Quintessence at all. This one has, it's a cleaner production quality. So I actually, you have the chance to appreciate Vortex's clean singing in this. And he actually does some black metal singing, which is crazy because I'd only ever heard his clean singing before, but he can do them both pretty well. That being said, as a whole, I don't love this album because I think Vortex, he shines the most when they go full out like epic symphonic, a grand production on this. Whereas these early albums and like this album, it's still very stripped back. It's still very lo-fi. They still have that very, black metal, it's not just an edge. It's, on the forefront. Whereas like the clean harmonies that Vortex brings are still kind of on the back burner, which is why I wouldn't put it any higher. But he does bring some solid stuff into here that I do enjoy. I really like the Black Totem and Winter Millennium. Some other decent ones, Ocean's Rise and The Witching Hour. But as a whole, all of those songs just solid. Just not quite my favorite style. So not a bad album by any means, but there's much better stuff from Vortex that is to come. Moving on to number 6, I have The Olden Domain. This is definitely my favorite of the classic era of Borknagar. And honestly, the singer on the first two albums, I can't remember his name, but the first album I could barely hear or understand his vocals because it's just straight up black metal screaming the whole time. This one, he actually has a nice mix between the black metal and the clean singing, and his clean singing actually sounds really solid and honestly better than Vintersorg for most of his stuff with Borknagar. This album is super unique in that it's kind of the only one that has the perfect mix and balance between black metal and folk metal, whereas the first album, Borknagar, is kind of just straight black metal with a little bit of folk sprinkled in here. This one is just like a really nice blend of black and folk, enough so that is enough folk on the forefront that I can enjoy it as someone who doesn't like too much black metal sound right in my face. That being said, I think this is like a classic in like of black metal albums, and obviously I wouldn't like it as much as most people because I don't love black metal sound, but I do like it when there's songs with a nice mix. Songs I like in here, The Eye of Odin is really good. I like A Tale of Pagan Tongue. The Dawn of the End is probably my favorite on this album. To Mountain Rove is pretty good. I like The Winter Way and Grimland Domain. So honestly, the majority of these songs are pretty solid. I wouldn't put it any higher. Once again, it's not my favorite type of style, and there's not too many songs that I think are truly top tier for me in terms of Borknagar's discography. But as a whole, this is definitely my favorite of the old Borknagar, and an album that's definitely worth checking out for black metal fans. All right, moving on to number 5. I have an album I already mentioned earlier, and that is Origin. Now, out of the middle 4, the kind of philosophy style of Borknagar, this is definitely my favorite because this is very different from the other ones in that it's not really black metal at all. It's kind of just a just fun kind of acoustic effort, which is probably why I like it the most. I can see other hardcore Borknagar fans not liking this one because it's such a radical departure from Borknagar's style, but I think that's probably why I like it the most. That being said, even though it's this high, it's less so because I think it's a great album and more so because it has a style that I can actually latch on to a little bit more, whereas to be honest, the majority of Borknagar's discography is just not really for me. Um, and I like the nice acoustic style. There's nothing too grating that gets under my skin like a lot of these kind of black metal stuff does. And honestly, the majority of this album is just kind of a fun, nice listen. I don't think there's any song in particular that is stand out. I think they're all just solid, earth imagery, grains, acclamation, spirit of nature. Basically, the whole album is just a nice, fun acoustic effort. There's nothing that's too stand out in this album, which is why I wouldn't put it any higher. But it's a nice album. It's a fun album. I like the style. So that's Origin coming in at number 5. Moving on to number 4. From here on out, this is like my favorite style of Borknagar, and I think it just kind of keeps getting better and better as they go on, which kind of spoils how this is coming out. But at number 4, I have Erd. Now we finally get Vortex back in the band, and now they're finally shifting away from their middle style of still like very much black metal with a little bit of a more progressive style, and they're doing all this philosophy stuff, and there still might be philosophy stuff in here, but now it feels like a nicer mix of the clean and the dark that I like the most. And Erd, there's definitely quite a few songs in here that I come back to and that I really enjoy. I think stands out in their discography. Some of my favorites, The Earthling is probably my favorite on the album. I also really love Frostrite. I like The Beauty of Dead Cities. There's other good ones like Mount Regency, The Plains of Memory, and A Deeper World. So honestly, the majority of this album is really solid, which is something I can say for other ones coming up here. Why it's not as high as the other ones, it's really that I just think they tune up their style even more. There's even more standout tracks. So while this is a solid album, and honestly, one other thing, it doesn't quite have enough Vortex. They up how much he's in as the albums go. I do think Wintersorg is good in these albums, but the more Vortex these albums get, the more I like them, to be honest, because I just love Vortex's voice. But Erd, it's a good album, but that is coming in at number 4. Moving on to number 3, I have Winter Thrice. Really, this one and Erd are basically interchangeable. They both have that nice blend between the two singers. I think you get a little bit more Vortex in here. And as a whole, I think it's just has a little bit more standout tracks, but it also has just a really consistent quality throughout. Favorites, Rhymes of the Mountain, Arrogant, Panorama, Noctilucent. Probably my favorite on the album, Arrogant or Noctilucent. But once again, basically the whole album, same thing that can be said of Erd can be said for this one, just a little bit better, not too much more to say. So that is Winter Thrice at number 3. Moving on to number 2, these next two were so hard to put. I think they're basically interchangeable. I would put them both at 1. They've both got my favorite style of Borknagar, but by a hair, I'm gonna give number 2 to True North. Now, True North brings in my opinion, the perfect style of Borknagar, the style that got me into the band and the style that I go back to and I re-listen to over and over. Every single song is good on this album, and it has just the perfect blend of that black edge with that like progressive, symphonic almost style that Vortex brings into this. Beautiful blending of the vocalists and the different sounds that they use in here. and just like that icy, frosty undertone. The True North is just the perfect title for this. And it's just got some amazing songs. Up North is great. My favorite on the album is definitely Lights, just absolutely beautiful. Into the White is good. Title is amazing. Voices, probably my second favorite. Notice the more Vortex, the more I like it. But every single song is good. Um, it's just a great album. Not too much more to say. So that is True North at number 2. And at number 1, by a little bit, I have their new album, Fall. And this is the album that got me into the band. It's got the exact same positives as True North does. For me, it just got a few higher of highs. It's even one thing, unlike True North, there's one song I don't love on this album. That's a last song called like Northward. But every single other song is absolutely excellent. My favorite on the album is Stars Ablaze. It just so beautifully done. The main chorus of it, the the darker overtone, and then like the different rhythms and layers on this, and how it's dark and low, and then it rises up with Vortex's vocals, and then it's back down and low, and it's just excellent. I love just the themes of like nature and God and the universe in here is just awesome. I'm ranting too much. Other amazing ones, I love Moon, that's just the pure Vortex song, fantastic. Nordic Anthems, probably my second favorite. Summits is spectacular. That one's very similar to Stars Ablaze, but I like Stars Ablaze a little more. Unraveling is great. The Wild Lingers is great. Afar is solid. Don't like it as much as the other ones, but this is just a spectacular album. Everything I said to True North is also true for this. Perfect blend for me, perfect style. You're definitely going to see it in my top 10, if not my top 5 favorite metal albums of 2024. And honestly, I hope Borknagar does a lot more albums just like this because it's fantastic. So that is Borknagar's 12 albums ranked from my least favorite to my favorite. Let me know in the comments. How would you rank their albums? What do you think about my thoughts on them, how I place them, how wrong am I? Let me know. Stick around if you enjoy my content. I'm going to be coming out with some more soon. I've got Mastodon coming up. I've got Firewind. I've got Opeth when their new album releases. Comment below what other bands would you like me to rank or what other videos you'd like me to do in the future. Uploads, it's going to be kind of sporadic. I'm working full-time here, so I'm just trying to get a couple videos out whenever I have time. But thank you to people who do continually watch my my videos and comment. It does mean a lot. And yeah, just thank you so much for all your support. But that is all I've got for you today, so I will see you later.